Everybody out there, I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the English Fluency Guide. Welcome to another live video here on YouTube. I thought this would be an interesting lesson because of a comment I received last week, the previous video. I didn't answer that in the comments, but I thought it was worth answering in an actual video, so here we are. Let me erase the title. I need to put up like a plastic screen or something like that so I can erase this much faster. But it is my workout before we begin. All right, I think the next thing I will do is produce some dry erase markers that erase easily. So I can have that. But nice to see everybody there. I'll go through this pretty quickly and see if anybody has any questions. I'll keep my eye on the chat, but this should be a pretty quick video. We'll see. But I always say that, and then they're like 2 hours long. So excuse me. If you're new to the channel, please click the subscribe button, especially if you are enjoying the video. I know we've just started, but that tells YouTube, hey, we should let other people know about this. And also, I try to have the lesson portion of videos right at the beginning, and then I leave time for people to ask questions after that. So as I mentioned, the previous video, someone posted in the comment, I forget exactly what the comment was. I should probably look that up. But I remember the general idea, which is the important part. So they were asking, they had seen, I think they bought some flashcards or something. And so one of them said something like, lions live in grassy areas, I think. So that was one sentence, but they had seen in some other place that lions, L-I-O-N, so lions live on grasslands. Oh no, we've got like a loudspeaker outside, so hopefully that doesn't get too annoying. But anyway, this learner was saying, hey, I had seen like both of these different things and was just kind of surprised that there were two ways of saying this. And so maybe they had some specific question. They didn't go into a lot of detail about it, but part of that might be about the difference between using in and using on in here, and also just talking about grassy, G-R-A-S-S-Y, grassy areas or grassy places. I think maybe that was it, grassy places. Or lions live on grasslands. Lions live on grasslands. So I wanted to make this video because a lot of people are trying to learn and be very specific and be very correct and perfect, really, by mastering specific grammar rules or specific vocabulary. And so they're beginning with words, or we'll put rules up here as well. But these are the basic parts of the language. Obviously, we have pronunciation there and culture and other things, but the basic just words on the paper, if we are reading something or in a book, and the rules for how to put those words together, they're usually starting with this, and then they might get a situation like this and think, oh, okay, so lions live on something. So whenever we hear about where lions live, we talk about lions living on a particular place. So that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, okay, here's the rule for this situation. So you begin with studying some kind of rules, and then here's an example you might find like on a flashcard or a textbook or something like that. So this example here would be a particular situation, but the point is they have the rules first, and they look for places to apply those rules. And what people are often hoping for is that there's one correct way to say something so that they can memorize that one correct thing, and then they always know what to say. But what actually happens is that people get into conversations and people don't speak the way you learned something in a textbook, or people break the rules, or people, they maybe blend their words together, they speak too quickly, or they have an accent that you're not familiar with. This is one of the major causes of doubt for people in communication, and that's the unpredictability of actual conversations or just real life speaking in general. So you don't know what people are going to say, and people often don't say things in the way you might get from a textbook or an English lesson. So I wanted to try to, I can help people understand these specific grammar rules, but I want you to look at the deeper picture here and change the way you think from trying to find the right way to express something to what do I feel comfortable using in this situation. So what do I feel comfortable or confident about? So what specific vocabulary, what way might I express something? And that's why instead of learning this way where we begin with rules and grammar, so we don't want to do this. I know it sounds like an odd thing. We do want to learn vocabulary, we do want to learn grammar, but how we learn it is really important. So we're going to do this the opposite way. Which is beginning with the actual situation over here, like some lions living in a particular place. And then we learn the various ways that people might express that. And there are many. And so this is another reason why we don't have just like specific words or phrases that get applied. It's more like, in this situation, how many different ways might you be able to express that? So let me first, just because I know people will want to know the difference for something like this. Like, imagine you have a large, I'm going to draw this as just like a large space, like a grassland. Imagine there's lots of grass growing here. You can put something on top of this. I'll draw here's a lion. It's a kind of a lion right there. And the legs, he's kind of sitting down, and there's the lion's tail. So that's a lion, a male lion. So the lion is physically on top of that space. So he's on a grassland. So you can talk about animals being on a particular kind of area, like penguins live on ice, or like, I don't know, some small mouse or something lives on rocks. Or on sand or whatever, something like that. Just like we might talk about being on a mountain. But if we're talking about being kind of surrounded by something, a slightly different meaning here, we're going to extend this area up so we get more of like a box kind of area. And there's no real difference between these two things. They mean the same thing, but the nuance is slightly different. So the lion being on, we're really just talking about the flat surface. You know, the lion is physically on something like that. But being inside something, like lions live in grassy areas, we can kind of imagine it as having like walls, like it's a box. Okay, so there's no real difference here, and this can help you understand the difference for this situation. The difference between in and on. And I've talked about this in various videos because these are very commonly used. Like, I might be sitting on a chair or sitting in a chair. I can use both of those, and both of them are correct. So here's a chair. Draw my picture of a chair here. And of course we get our usual ambulance or whatever. So here is a chair. I could be sitting down. To describe this situation, I could be sitting on the chair, or I could be sitting in the chair. Now, what might be the difference? It doesn't matter. Natives will use both of those things, but the nuance, if you care, is slightly more like, remember, on is just thinking about the seat area like that. Like, I'm sitting on some particular thing. But if we're going to add maybe some arm rests on the sides of this, or we can imagine the chair as kind of a particular space, just like it has walls like that, then we can see it as being on the chair or in the chair. Okay? So hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear about specific rules. But the point of this video is to get you to stop thinking like that and begin more with, instead of, again, like this thing, we want to begin with the situation, like, here is a person sitting, and how might we describe that? So as I just gave the examples, a person might be sitting on a chair, or a person might be sitting in a chair, or he's just sitting. Person might be just sitting. You don't even need to say on or in the chair, or they're just relaxing over there. So they are reclining or they're sitting back. There are different ways that people might express this. And so what natives are doing as they're learning is they're beginning with particular situations, even something very simple like a small action like this. Often young children, when they're learning the language, parents will be very specific about what they're showing them. Like, look, this is a marker. We're having the cap and the marker over here, so we put the cap on the marker, just like I put a cap on my head, like a hat or a cap like that. So I put on the cap just like I put on a shirt, and I can take off my shirt and I could take off the cap. Same kind of idea. So we're beginning with the situation, and that's how we learn the rules and the vocabulary, and we learn them and understand them intuitively, naturally, automatically, without having to begin with thinking about rules and then thinking about how that might work. Because what happens is rules, it's learning vocabulary, but taking a few words and using them or mixing them in different ways, and that creates a rule that we might learn. So it gets a little bit more confusing for people that way. But if you learn this way, where you begin with a situation and think about what are the specific ways that people might say that, and there are many, it's not just one right thing. The whole point is that natives might be able to express many different ways of saying something. And you can learn in this exact same way by understanding and following situations rather than trying to look at specific rules or grammar. So if you do learn rules or grammar first, the difficulty here is that you might learn a word like in, but then that word is used differently in some other context, and then you're confused because you think, oh, like the word in goes for this situation. But the truth is that in could work in many different situations. It just depends on what people are talking about. So the opposite way here, where we begin with a situation, like again, even something simple, take off, put on, take off, put on. Okay, so I snap on. So in this way you can hear a little sound as the cap clicks on here. I'm snapping on the cap. You hear that snap? The snap on. So I'm snapping something on, or I'm clicking something on. And again, you're learning it the native way without having to try to translate anything, because you're seeing the example and hearing the native English at the same time. So you have the situation with the vocabulary rather than the vocabulary in your language and vocabulary in English. Okay? So when I'm hearing like questions like this, I understand and I want to help people answer these, but I really want you to get to the bottom of why people have these questions, and that's because of the way they learn. So it's typically they're beginning with rules and things like this, or they get a particular example and they think, wait a minute, like this is not the way I learned it, or this is a different example. It's really difficult for people to accept multiple ways of saying things. But that's the key to fluid speech, because when you're in a conversation and you forget something or you don't feel confident about one way of saying something, you can easily switch to something else. Okay? So that's me right now as I'm speaking to you. I don't have a plan. I'm not looking at an outline of the things I want to say. I'm just continuing to flow with my words. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I have kind of a general goal, a place I'd like to be, a thing I'd like to explain, but there could be many different ways I explain that. So I could start by saying one thing and maybe I don't think that's the best way, and I switch to something else. Does that make sense? All right. So another example of this, it's a slightly different thing. This is from, I think, maybe 2 videos ago. Let me erase this bottom part. And this is where I gave a story, actually, this was a while ago, but this is my wife. My wife had confused oversleep to oversleep and sleep over. And another example of this that came from a video recently, this is maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, was someone who had said, like, to think on your toes. To think on your toes. And I'll tell you this story again very quickly, but I was speaking with my wife and she said, oh, like, I couldn't take our daughter somewhere because I was sleeping over. And I said, what? You're sleeping over? And she was like, yeah, you're like, I was sleeping and I slept for too long or whatever. And I said, oh, you mean you overslept? To sleep over means like you're actually sleeping over at somebody else's house. And I said, I hope you're not doing that. So hopefully she's not. But this is the difference between oversleep and sleep over. And because my wife made this mistake, it's an example of trying to learn the vocabulary. Often people will hear a phrase and think, oh, that's an interesting phrase, I'd like to use that. But they're focusing more on just trying to remember the specific words or remember them in a certain order, rather than really understanding what something means and eliminating all the doubt and thinking, okay, now I understand. Like, you're actually sleeping over at somebody's house. Like, I'm playing over at the park. I'm over in a different location. I'm doing something someplace else. So to oversleep means to do something too much. So I might overeat if I eat too much, or I don't know, maybe I'm like overdoing something. So as you get more examples, so related examples, this is that naturally varied review that helps you understand the language better by getting related examples. So I might oversleep, overdo, overthink. I'm thinking too much. I need to just calm down. I'm overthinking a situation, to overthink something. So a native hears these different examples, they're beginning with the situation, and they think, oh, that's interesting. A lot of these things are related, so I might oversleep or overthink or overdo or overplay or overeat, all of these different examples. And that's how they come to understand the vocabulary. So they begin with the situation, then learn the vocabulary, and as they kind of build this web in their mind, it's a connection of all these different words and their meanings and how they might be used. And they feel confident about using them because, number one, they have different ways of expressing themselves. But number two, they actually understand the vocabulary well. So you develop confidence and fluency by understanding the vocabulary well, by beginning with situations rather than by beginning with the vocabulary, which is just more difficult to understand because you don't know what a word means outside of a context. So words are always connected with something, so it's much better to begin with that thing they're connected with. So here, so this example is sleep over and sleep with. This was another example I heard from a learner. So this is an incorrect way to use this expression. The example is actually to think on your feet. But it's an example of someone who might learn the vocabulary but not use the right words because they're maybe like confusing different expressions and they're trying to organize those and make sure they use the right thing in their head before they speak. But the other expression that's related to this is to keep someone on their toes. So to think on your feet, like right now I'm standing, I'm not on my toes, I'm just on my feet because I'm standing. And it means that if something happens to me, I can react to something, or I can think of a way to respond to that very quickly. I can think on my feet. I can think on my feet. So we're not really thinking like, trying to imagine yourself standing on your toes. It's just talking about being able to stand up without having any preparation or me planning anything beforehand. Like someone says something to me and I'm able to react immediately. So I can think on my feet, or someone else can think on their feet. But to keep someone on their toes, you can imagine an athlete. I know you can't really see my feet right here, but imagine someone who's like moving around like a boxer. They don't stand flat-footed. Usually they're kind of up on the balls of their, like the little kind of toes right there. They're moving up a little bit like that so they can move quickly. If I just stand on my feet, if I'm flat-footed just means I'm standing like this instead of kind of bouncing like that, ready to move around. If you keep someone on their toes, just like you're fighting another boxer, you're keeping them on their toes. You're trying to get them to keep moving around. They need to feel prepared so that they can react. Okay, so again, these phrases, they become much easier to understand when you connect them with the actual situation rather than just trying to think like, oh, think on your toes means like reacting quickly. And you're trying to begin with the vocabulary and then think back to what it means. But it's much easier if we begin with the idea of a boxer. So someone is kind of moving like this, and yeah, I feel bad that you can't see my feet right here, but you can imagine somebody like try moving around. You know, it's much easier to do it if you're on kind of the little balls right before your toes. So it's much easier to do that, like just the bottom, draw like a little foot right here. It's maybe a little bit easier to see that. So here's the ankle coming down. And so this person right here, this is a flat-footed person, like the whole heel. So this is the heel back here. And then like the whole foot is on the ground like this. But someone who's on their toes, a boxer, you know, here's the heel like this and the toes kind of go down like that. So they got like the ball, like the heel is up here. There's lots of space. Just the bottom part where the toes are is touching the ground. Okay, so when someone is playing a sport, they're usually not standing flat-footed like that. They're kind of up a little bit. They're on their toes. So it's not like a ballet dancer, but you know, the same kind of idea of being on your toes, it means you're ready to deal with something. So if I'm keeping someone on my toes, that's the physical idea where this phrase comes from. But then once we understand that, we can apply it to other situations where, like, my wife is, you know, like asking me to do different things, or I try to do something and help out at home, but then she gets angry at me, so I use the wrong sponge or something like that. So if those things happen, my wife is keeping me on my toes. I'm kind of like, I don't know what I should do in that situation. So there are many different places or times where I might use an expression like that, even if I'm not physically moving around. But doesn't it make you understand it a lot better? Don't you feel more confident about using it if you really understand what's happening? So if you are keeping someone else on their toes or they are keeping you on your toes, it's the same idea of like not really like feeling comfortable, and you have to be ready to react, just like a boxer is. Okay? So to think on your feet, I'm like thinking on my feet over here. It means I'm just standing up, even if I'm not sitting down, writing something, preparing something. I could just be in a conversation, standing and talking just like I am now, and I can respond quickly and easily and comfortably to people. I can think on my feet. Think on my feet. So you probably wouldn't like think on your fingers or whatever, because you don't stand on your fingers. At least most people don't. I don't know how to do that, but this is the general idea over here. So thinking on your feet, it just means you're ready to react. All right, so we can use this. That's where the idea comes from. But even if you're sitting down, we can still use the expression like, ooh, that person can really respond well and have a good conversation. That person can think on their feet. If something happens, there's trouble, or they need to respond in a conversation quickly, they can do that. They can think on their feet. Okay? All right, hopefully that makes sense. Let me go back and look at comments. But just to recap this idea very quickly, when people are beginning with vocabulary, they're typically trying to connect some vocabulary with words that they know in their native language, because it just feels more comfortable to do that. So you already know the thing, or maybe something related in your native language, and you try to translate. This is the way most people learn languages, especially in regular school. But if you want to become fluent, if you want to be able to think on your toes, or even, you know, if other people are keeping you on, or, you know, think on your feet, or if other people are keeping you on your toes, then you need to be able to respond quickly and automatically. And you do that by beginning with the situation and then seeing these different ways people communicate. So number one, it will make you feel more confident about the vocabulary because you really understand it well. And number two, you will also see lots of different ways that people respond. So if I go out, here I am living in Nagasaki, Japan, and I go to a department store, I can just sit on a little chair or something. So again, I'm sitting on a chair, or I can sit in a chair, and I can listen to people talk. And I can hear even like a child says, I want to buy that toy. And the parent says, no, you can't get that. So this is a common situation. American parents will experience this. Japanese parents will see this. Same kind of thing. But how might people say that? So in English, a mother might say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't get you that. Or they might be like, if the child is really whining or something like, please buy me that toy. I really want to buy that toy. And the parent says, no. Like, no, we bought you a toy last week, or whatever the thing is. But if you listen to that, if you watch 10 different parents in a situation, in that particular situation, you will hear some different ways of expressing that. And that's what makes you feel confident about knowing what to say. It's not because you learned one right way to say something. It's because you've seen examples of lots of natives doing that. Okay, so that's what gives you the confidence to say something. It's the same thing with pronunciation. If you only hear one example of something, like one teacher tells you something, you will feel less confident than hearing a bunch of different natives express the same thing. So if I hear 10 different natives say, you have to think on your feet. You have to think on your feet. Some people will say it more slowly. Others will be faster or maybe have a different accent or something, but you will feel a lot more confident about that. And that will also prepare you to hear different examples of natives, just in movies or real life talking about things if you're prepared in that way. Does this make sense? Hopefully it does. But this is how you learn to express yourself even if you don't know the right words, because there could be some perfect way to express yourself, but there are usually multiple ways to do that. And native speakers or fluent speakers, even if they're not native, they're able to express themselves because they don't get stuck looking for one way to say something. They always have different ways of expressing things. I could get stuck or forget how to say something or not feel confident about this word. That's okay. I easily switch to something else. So just like our examples about the lion living in grassy areas, I could even use other words like lions live on a savanna. Savanna. I think that's S-V-A-N-N-A, savanna. Savannah. If I'm spelling that correctly, savanna. But savanna just means a grassy area. So it's another way of saying that same thing. Now, if I say grassy area, that's particularly fine. But typically when people think of like savanna, it's like the kind of drier, grassy area. It gets a little bit more nuanced or a bit more specific, but a savanna is basically a large grassy area, a grassland. Okay, so the point is not to find one specific way, because you could get 10 native speakers together or 10 just fluent speakers, and they would each say things in a slightly different way. I guarantee it. And is what we show in Fluent for Life. We get all these different people together and have conversations and listen to the way they speak. And people don't all speak the same way. There is some overlap. So you might have people are talking about some specific situation. And so one person says something, and another person is describing that situation in a slightly different way, but there is some overlap there. Or maybe another person describes it and there's another overlap here. I told this story maybe like a few years ago or something like this, but there is a video series about sports that I enjoy watching called 30 for 30, if you've ever seen this. 30 for 30. So this was a sports documentary film series. And one of these videos, I think you can find it on YouTube, it's called Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks. So it's just a story about basketball. But there's one scene where this player, Reggie Miller, he makes, I think, 11 points or something like that in 10 seconds. So the team was losing, but then he gets these points and then the team is winning again and everyone's going crazy, like, how did he do that? And so some different people are being interviewed for this. They're just talking about this specific situation. Again, we're talking about a situation. So we've got different people being interviewed about a situation, and they all said the same thing. So they're describing the situation in slightly different ways, but there was one expression that they all used to describe this. So again, they're describing this player. So he gets the ball, he shoots like a three-pointer, and then he steals the ball and goes back and shoots another three-pointer. So he understands what's happening, and he knows he needs to get points, like even how many points to win the game. And a lot of players, like, they're not really thinking so much like that. They might just try to quickly panic and get the ball up and try to throw it up as quickly as possible, and maybe they shoot. But they use a very specific expression to describe this. And so they all use the same thing, and that was to have the presence of mind. Presence, the presence of mind. So it's really interesting when they cut the documentary and they show these different people talking about that scene, they all say, to have the presence of mind, to have the presence of mind, to have the presence of mind. So these are people being interviewed individually, separately. They don't know they're like talking to other people. But they all use this same expression because it really captures that thing well. But it's not the only way you could say that. Anyway, to have the presence of mind, it means like you're aware of what's happening rather than just kind of panicking or you don't really know what you're doing right now. All right, so to have the presence of mind. So as you see lots of people talking about a particular situation, you will automatically come to understand the vocabulary and the grammar, and this is the same thing you did in your native language. It's the same thing you continue to do today. As you learn and hear new things, there are new, maybe you heard about, I don't know, like some new product or a new disease or something like that, and people begin talking about it. That's how you learn to talk about it. You just hear different people talking about it. You feel confident as you understand it well, and then you can start talking about it too. It's really that simple. All right. Let me go back and check comments, but let me know if you have any questions about this idea, because this really is the simpler, easier way to find the words when you need them in conversations. The point is just to let go of like one specific way of saying something. All right, so let's take a look. We've got a couple of good mornings there. Nice to see everybody. I will go quickly through these to get to, let's see, some more questions there. Jack Smith says, hey, or hi, maybe lions live at grassy areas. What's the difference? Thanks. Well, we don't really live at like a large open area. Typically, when we're talking about an environment, like I wouldn't live at Chicago, I would live in Chicago, because we're talking about being within a particular area. But if I'm at a specific location, like a grassland, if we were talking about that, I'm just trying to think about how we might say like at a grassland. Like I might meet you at the grassland, if that's kind of a smaller area, but it's like a grassland is usually a really big area. It's not just like even a city is a large space. If I say, hey, I'll meet you at Chicago, it wouldn't make sense because it's just too big. But I would meet you at a store in Chicago, or I would meet you at a particular, I don't know, like corner or something like that. And again, there are different ways you could express this, but that's when we use at rather than for having a large area and describing where we might be on that thing. So I could be on a grassy area or within a grassy area. It just like, are you talking about the space where you're on top of something or kind of feeling within a particular area? All right, DeTrecklin says, hello, sir. Which is the correct one, in the sky or on the sky? On sounds weird. Yeah, most people would just say in, because it's the same thing like being in the water. So remember, if it's more of like a box area, and it doesn't matter if this is grass or if this is water or if this is air, like you're up in the sky. If you are inside this and you're talking about being in that, just like you might be an astronaut up in space. So the same thing. It's like being inside of a box. Even if there are not actual walls, it's still a space. Like just like I'm in a room right now. Okay? or I'm in Nagasaki. I could be in a larger area like that. All right. So if I were on the sky, it's more like if the sky has if it's like a dome or something, or there's a place where it ends, and I could be on top of the sky like that. But nobody would really talk about it usually. If they're just like a plane or a helicopter or flying, I'm up in the sky. They're not on the sky, they're inside of it. So water is an example where we might have, like, let's say we have a swimming pool, and we could be, like, I'm talking to my friend, I'm on the phone. I could be sitting on a little floating chair like that. So this is me up here on a little, like a floating chair. Technically, I'm on the water. But I could also tell my friend, hey, I'm in the pool right now. Like, I wouldn't say I'm on the pool. I'd be in the pool, even if I'm not physically in the water. So, again, these are slight nuances that you care more about as a non-native learner because you're beginning with the vocabulary, not with the situation. So regularly, a native might be, if I'm talking with my friend, I'm on the phone, and he can't see me, and he says, oh, what are you doing right now? I mean, what would I probably say? Oh, I'd say, like, I'm at the pool. I could be at the pool. I could be in the pool. He doesn't really know that, and I'm not going to go into detail about, like, actually, I'm sitting on a little floating chair. So really, I'm not in the water, but I'm kind of on the water. Nobody talks like that. So in general, there are different ways I could express this. All right, and that's the point. So we begin with the situation. There's somebody here. How might we talk about that? So there are different ways, but it's important to begin with the situation, and you learn the nuances that way. But as you see them, and it's not just a situation you can see, I'm just trying to make it easier to understand the point. But here, again, he's on the water. He's not in the water. Maybe his foot is in the water, but the rest of his body is not. So which do you say? Is he on the water or in the water? Okay. Doesn't really matter, but those are the kinds of nuances that you understand as you look at the situation and hear natives describing it. Okay, so don't worry about one way to say something. The more important thing is how can I really understand things the same way a native would? And you do that by getting more native examples. It's pretty simple. All right, let me see here. Did I miss anybody else? Let's see, Bridget, he's on the ball. Yeah, it's another way you express that. Fingers a toe. Oh, I think I answered that one already. And Merrick says, hello, I just wanted to say that it's better to pay someone to teach you instead of learning English on your own. I've been learning English for 6 years. For the first year I was learning on my own was bad. Now I learned Chinese, and from the beginning where the teacher goes much quicker, saying it because people have questions nonstop. These videos are useful, thanks for them, but I still think it's better to pay someone to teach you because you can get straight answers straight away. Yeah, so this is another reason to join Fluent for Life. For the people who do join, we are here 24 hours a day to answer questions people have. But the more important point is not like having a teacher there. It's more, do I have correct examples, natural examples that can help me understand the language? How can I erase the doubt? Because lots of people do study with personal teachers, private tutors, and they still don't get fluent. And the reason is because either that person doesn't really know how to teach very well, so they can explain the language, but they don't really help you understand it intuitively. And the second part is you're not getting lots of examples from a variety of people. So even in my case, like, I don't have a specific teacher, but like the whole country is my teacher. I get examples from TV, examples from family, or going out and just meeting people or hearing people on the street for learning Japanese. All of those things come naturally, and those are the things that answer my questions. And so it's nice if you do have a teacher, but a lot of people do have teachers and still don't get fluent. All right, so the key is not having a personal teacher, although that's nice, but the person also needs to be able to explain things and help you understand them intuitively, but also somehow you need to be able to get multiple examples, because one clear teacher is going to be different from hearing lots of native examples in movies or TV shows or whatever. So you need to get that naturally varied review if you want to be prepared for that. I am in your mind. It's good, says Perio, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And sir, when we are on live TV, we can say on Sky. I mean, if like nobody would, like, no native I've ever heard anyone say that. We would just say on the air, if that's what you're talking about. And this is another, it's another one of these same kinds of examples where people are confusing. And again, I don't know if this is the case, but it sounds like it. So sky versus air. So usually what happens is, like the example I gave about my wife misunderstanding vocabulary, or this other example about like keeping people on their feet or thinking on your toes, where you misuse the vocabulary. I remember like if you've ever seen Die Hard 3, so Bruce Willis movie Die Hard with a Vengeance, he's in an elevator with some German, I don't know, they're like the German bad guys in the movie. But one of the guys says, "Oh, it's like raining like dogs and cats recently." And then he's hearing that, he's like, "Oh, like they're using English, but they're using it incorrectly. The actual expression is it's raining cats and dogs." Now, it doesn't really matter if you say dogs and cats, but the point is, if you use that incorrectly, it means you've just kind of learned the expression and you're trying to remember the words rather than really understanding where it comes from or really getting lots of examples to use something correctly. So in the movie, he's like, I guess these guys are not natives or whatever. I think he knew that anyway, but it's interesting. Like one of them is saying, "Oh, it's raining dogs and cats." And he's like, yes. So they know the English, but they're using it incorrectly, meaning that, oh no, maybe these are the bad guys somehow. Anyway, so talking about being on the radio, that's a more specific example of being on the air. And we get this expression because we're talking about radio waves. If I can draw a little like radio, just very simple kind of radio tower here, and the signal goes out like this, beep, 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 beep. So if you're, I think it's called Simon Says in other countries. That was the original name for the movie in America, but I think they just changed it to Die Hard with a Vengeance. But the character's name is Simon. So anyway, if you're imagining this, it's like some people are talking, and look at that. Whoa, we're on the air. Our voices are kind of floating on the air. Our voices are on the air. So this is where we get the expression on the air. So when a voice or some kind of sound or radio or music, whatever, is being broadcasted like this, so we're sending a signal out, it's physically traveling through the air. So we are on the air right now. But we don't say we are on the sky, because we're not talking about like physical sky. It's just, look at that, like here's the air. Like I'm kind of, even broadcasting right now. I could say I'm on the air, just like a television signal is also on the air in the same way. But radio came before television, and we're using the same kind of technology like that. So when people were talking about being on the air, that's what they're talking about. But air does not mean the same thing as sky in this situation. And this is another example that proves my point. So if you begin with like, oh, that's interesting, someone like maybe I get a mistranslation of this. So I'm learning this, like I hear like in Japanese, air is like kuki. And so maybe I hear that and I'm like, sorakana. Like I'm like, does that mean sky? And I'm trying to understand that. That's me not learning the language correctly, or not learning the language in a way that will help me feel confident about it. So I'm not eliminating any doubt, because I learned something probably through a mistranslation, and that's why I don't use it correctly. But if you understand, hopefully, is it clear now why we talk about being on the air? Let me know. Just like click the like button, or just let me know if that makes sense. But the point is, when a broadcast, you're sending a signal out like this. You have a tower and it's going through the air. So we can kind of imagine being like, just like a surfer riding a wave. We are on the air like that. So we could be like in the air. That's another way we express it, but the typical expression is on the air. So right now, like I'm on the air in a similar kind of way. So we still use this expression even if we're talking about streaming, like I'm doing a live video like this right now. Same kind of idea. All right. So if that's what your question was, I don't know if that's for sure. I didn't get much information about that, but I imagine this is another kind of example of this similar mistake of like thinking that the vocabulary is the same because you're beginning with the vocabulary. Hopefully that clears the air over here. All right, makes everything, we get all the pollution and the misunderstanding and the doubt out of the way. We clear the air. Okay? We don't clear the sky, we clear the air. It's like we got like kind of bad air in this room. We got to clear the air. All right. Let me see if anybody else had some entertaining questions over here. Ed Merrick says, I have to admit that I live in the UK. I have to speak English at work. Consider it's a huge advantage, but I still pay for lessons. Yeah. And so again, this is why a lot of people, I mean, typically the people who join my programs are often people living in the United States or Canada or Australia. It's people who like really feel that they need to get fluent quickly and understand the language quickly. If you live, like far away and you don't need to use English, you're less motivated to learn or to pay for programs. But when you really need to get fluent, this is when people are like, yes, I should pay for people to get me fluent faster. Hello, teacher, is in for a long period of time, for example, in spring and summer? Yeah. So again, if you're thinking about a calendar period or a time period, we have a start and an end to that. So this is springtime, so we can talk about being in spring. But within a particular day, we might be doing something. My birthday is on a particular day. So I'm talking about the whole day, not just like a piece of something like that. Okay. So yes, we can use the language like that. Aaron says, how can I get fluent in advanced words? It's simple to speak and express fluently with simple words, but it's harder with abstract things. Do you have any good advice being fluent in individual? I don't know, maybe did you finish that somewhere? Are you really fluent in basic things, but you're not fluent in more advanced things? Maybe you can give me an example of that. But typically I find people think they're fluent. Like they know a lot, but they don't actually express themselves very well. So if you are actually fluent and you feel complete confidence when you're speaking with just basic things, it's easy to start looking at different examples of how natives might express those things in a more advanced way. So like the lions living on the grassland, that's an example. So I might watch a program for children about lions, and they're going to give me more basic vocabulary. They might teach me some new things, but adult vocabulary would be used, or more advanced vocabulary would be used in a program for college kids or adults. So that would be a way to improve or to go from basic things to more advanced things or more detailed or more complex things. It's just, again, we begin with a situation and then think about how different people might describe that. I think there's a series on YouTube that's talking about, it's like experts explain something to people at different levels. So an expert would try to explain, I don't know, space travel or something like that. They try to explain that to a 5-year-old kid, and they're very simple. It's a very easy explanation. And then they go through different levels, and then one is like, how do I explain this to a high level master's student or something like that. So that's another interesting example. That's just another example of naturally varied review, where we get a specific situation. How do we describe this? So how do I describe that to a beginner or to an intermediate or to more advanced, something like that. But that's how you would do that. So you just get different examples of natives expressing things in a more advanced way, but they could be talking about the same kinds of stuff. Let's see, this guy Jason says, hi, Drew from China. I've been watching your videos for a long time. Sometimes I still need to understand words with translation. Some words are abstract. Yes, I understand that people might still need translations. And for me, if I don't have anyone to teach me anything, or I can't get an explanation in Japanese if I'm trying to learn something in Japanese, but typically you could get explanations or find a way to understand things within the language, because that's how people in the language do it. So if you have like a specific question about me, you can also look up the question. You can ask me just like you did, or you can look up in an English to English dictionary to get that explanation, rather than using Chinese or, for anyone here, whatever your native language might be. But the point is, as best you can, even if an idea is abstract or something, like I was asking this happened to me last night. My daughter used some Japanese that I didn't know. And I said, oh, what does that mean? Because there was no real context for it. She was folding some laundry, and I even, what did she say? I forget the word now. I heard it like one time, and I need to hear it again to remember it. But in that case, I was like, what did you just say? And she couldn't explain it to me in English or Japanese. She was just folding laundry, and like I kind of understood the idea, but I did not have confidence to use it. And as you can see, I don't even remember the word. If I heard it again, I would probably recognize it. Again, that's that awareness level. So I've gotten to awareness for that vocabulary. I recognize it when I hear it, but I don't own the word yet. So I don't feel 100% confident about it. So yes, it's okay. If translations are your only option, then get those. But usually there are ways to get things in English, either just a dictionary definition or some kind of explanation from somebody else. Let's see, Rocky says, English native speakers living in Tokyo don't seem to feel the need to learn Japanese quickly. Yeah, Japan is interesting in that way, because a lot of people, you can get by without knowing much Japanese. And Japanese people are often very kind and accommodating, so they are helpful even if you don't. If I do that sometimes. So I go around like pretending I don't speak Japanese, and people will try to speak more English. So they feel a bit more comfortable speaking English if they think I don't speak any Japanese at all. But usually if my Japanese is good, I'm speaking to people in Japanese normally, they will not try to speak any English to me, usually. But people will try to make more of an effort if they think I don't know any Japanese. But yeah, it's good if you know the language, and that's why I wanted to learn it. But obviously, especially in Tokyo, like a larger city like that, there are many places that you're okay without it. Yes, says Aaron, I can express myself confidently and comfortably, but the goal is to write professional emails with better vocabulary or read articles and so on. What do I need to do? Well, just do those things. So get examples of those things. So if you want to write better mails, and I don't know what you mean exactly by that, because often when people are writing, they think they need to use more advanced vocabulary, when most professional email is just, let's be clear and specific and short, without trying to make things sound more difficult or more complex, or trying to sound like you're more intelligent or whatever. You just want to get people to the point, especially in professional communication. It's not like writing a novel where you're trying to tell an interesting story or describe things in great detail. So I just want to make sure you don't do something that like is getting kind of like not getting you to the goal you want. So it might be better to read more, novels or things like that, if you just want to expand your vocabulary. But if you want to learn how to communicate correctly for professional purposes, then I would do just get examples of people writing letters like that. So I actually have a course. I have a course in business English communication from over 100 years ago that I just bought because I was interested to see what they were teaching. And you know what they were teaching? Exactly the same thing I do, which is not trying to be fancy, just communicate directly with people, be simple, make sure you're communicating without trying to confuse people or whatever. The point is to make sure that people are understood and that you are understood as well. So again, think about what your specific goal is. I would probably read more maybe fiction novels if you're just trying to understand things in a more interesting way and learn new vocabulary, or watch videos about that. But if you want to communicate better, just get examples of how people are doing that. Let's see. And Merrick says, do you have any videos that specifically explain when to use present perfect and past simple? Theoretically, it's simple, but when it comes to practice, English people use it when I wouldn't. Thanks. Search the channel for present perfect, but that's like I gave an example about that. Watch the video about have. So search my channel for a video about, it's like uses of have or something like that. But I talk about this and how people are using the present perfect, and it gives an example of the same kind of thing of how to use a fluency trigger to understand the vocabulary more like a native. But yeah, I would just search the channel for that. Let's see. Arthur says, I just got in. Welcome to the program. And Guadalupe says, hi, Drew, from Sebastopol. I like to watch your video every time I get the time. Glad to hear it. Let's see. Raga says, do you feel being a foreigners within the United States when you are visiting other states? I've ever heard that rules of ways. You mean, do I feel like a foreigner when I travel to different places in America? Not especially. I mean, it's like an interesting, maybe some cultural differences or something a little bit, but no, most people just feel like Americans. I get that kind of general American feel. And let's see. And Aaron says, yes, I have your course and have been your student for a long time. Thanks for your advice again. Yeah, glad to hear it. If you have any questions, also, you can post in the comments section and let us know, and we're here to help. All right, look at that. We got through the video. Fantastic. So I'll give a quick recap for everyone. Again, the basic idea is when you start learning with vocabulary, especially through translations, and then you try to fit that vocabulary with different situations, it's much more difficult and it's more confusing to learn that way. But if you begin with the situation and see how different natives express that, then you can learn the English in English, and you also learn many ways to express yourself. So that's part of the ways of kind of eliminating doubt that stop people from speaking, is they're often beginning with grammar rules or words, and then they're trying to think about the right way, like the one way to express something, because that's what their teacher told them to say. But just like in your native language, you probably have many ways of expressing things, and in English, we do the same thing. So pay attention, watch what natives are doing. If you have an interest in something like watching lions on the African grasslands or whatever, watch a bunch of videos about that, and I promise you will learn to speak much more fluently just by seeing all these different examples, because they're eliminating the doubt you have and showing you how natives really express themselves. All right? Well, if you'd like to learn more about this and get help for the people who just like to, get fluent as quickly as possible and without having to search for things or try to teach themselves, or they get stuck because they're, oh no, all I can do is translate. I don't have anyone to explain things. That's what we do in Fluent for Life. So you can click on the link in the description below this video to learn more about that. The link for Frederick, which I haven't spoken about in this video, but that's another way to discover the language for yourself and teach yourself the language very quickly. Learn lots of words and grammar and pronunciation, but do it from situations rather than trying to learn it from the vocabulary and try to fit things in where maybe it doesn't feel natural or you don't really feel that you understand something very well. So if you'd like to do that, you can click on the links in the description, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.